Mark Taylor, thanks for doing this, my man.
Eric, good to see you.
Likewise. So I love starting these off by just telling the audience a little bit about yourself, where you work, and then we'll get into the experience with Agent Launch. How's that sound?
Perfect. So my name's Mark Taylor. I'm a real estate agent way upstate New York, pretty close to the Canadian border. So if you're thinking New York City, we're 6 hours north of there. With Keller Williams, kind of jumped around from brokerages a little bit, tried EXP, tried a local brokerage up here, landed at Keller about 2 years ago. I have a pretty good experience. I have a team. It's myself, my brother, a couple agents underneath us, then a licensed full-time assistant. And I started working with Agent Launch probably a couple years ago at this point, year and a half
That's
ago.
almost 2 years. Yeah. Nice. So Mark and I caught up last week, and I figured it'd be time to do this. So it's been a while now, but yeah, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about where you were at when we started working together, and walk us through the journey of, you know, how we've gotten from there until now, and talk a little bit too about like the deal flow you were doing coming in and some of the system stuff. And why don't you just tell that story for everybody?
Sure. So floundering is really the answer to how we were doing before we started working with Agent Launch. We kind of gave it our best shot, but I think you can sit in front of the computer for 8 hours a day and not really know what to do if you don't have some type of good guidance or structure. I want to say 3 years ago, I did 25 transactions. 2 years ago, when my brother had joined us, so I guess this is like 2 to 3 years ago, but 2 calendar years ago, we did something like 40. And then last year and this year, last year we did 110. We've already got 65 under contract. It's mid-April. Yeah, we're anticipating
April 17th today.
Yeah, so like probably 150 this year is the target for the two of us. As far as the structure goes, thank you. As far as the structure goes, when we partnered with Agent Launch, you guys gave us just a really clear template. It's like, lead comes in, next X amount of days, this is what you do every day. And when we first started with Agent Launch, we didn't always do that. Probably for the first 4 to 6 months, we kind of just kept doing things the way we've been doing them, which was sporadically at best. And it was just last January, so 23, that we kind of had a come to Jesus moment. We were like, look, if we're going to do this, we want to capitalize and make some money. So let's do it all right. At which point we just zoned in on the systems, followed them to a T. There were leads that would come in, and we'd look back in our CRM, look at them and see they were called once. Some were not called at all. One voicemail, that was it. At this point, we're touching a solid 12 to 15 times per contact, and finding that lots of them, they come to on, touch 8, 9, 10 plus. And that's just eye-opening. It's really fun to see, actually. You kind of see the whole history with that lead and all those outreaches that aren't responded to. And then when they finally answer, it's very satisfying. Some of them being, $1 million plus clients.
It's funny because people often, and this is why I love your stories, because people often don't really want to do the work at first, but it's only when you do the work and you start seeing it work that you want to do the work.
I would certainly agree. We were literally, my brother came out of investment banking. He was like ready to go back into it. So it was us hitting a wall, being like, we're just too miserable doing this, but not having the good results. We're both very competitive people. We know a lot of people who are kind of high achievers. So it's just kind of embarrassing, frankly, transparently, to not be performing at a high level. So for us, it took like that pain to be like, well, we got to try something. And we tried. And then I want to say that March through May of 2023, March through May, June, it was like a wave that just slammed a ton of under contracts. We probably had 30, 40 under contracts simultaneously in that window.
Wow.
When the previous year, that was the whole year.
Wow. How many of the deals you've done, say last year and even this year, have come from the lead generation we've been doing?
I should be able to tell you precisely. I would
roughly.
I'd say something like a third. What I know is this.
Okay.
It's our best ROI by far. So we spend money on Zillow, on Realtor, on Facebook, and our pay-per-click with you guys is by far the best ROI. And one really interesting thing too, we live in a small enough city. It's like 20,000 ish people in the immediate city that we're in, that we have names come through of local business owners, of the mayor, of just random people who are kind of, upper tier people in our community. And then us being able to hit them with that semi-warm outreach has been really valuable.
So a third, and that's been true today. Like, I guess what I'm curious about is, you guys have obviously built a brand, Taylor Brothers.
Right.
And so you're seeing the fruits of that. But what I always tell people is this is a long game. You guys know this at this point. How have you seen that manifest now that you've been doing this for a couple of years? Because you always get those leads at first that are like a year out, a little bit longer out, whatever. Now you've been doing it for a couple of years. Like, are you seeing the snowball effect?
Yeah. I was at Pizza Hut the other day, and this is kind of random, but a guy was like, "Oh, I thought that was you." When he saw, I was like, "For Mark Taylor." He was like, "I thought that was you." I was like, "Oh, how do we know each other?" He's like, I saw your sign." And I was like, "Really?" So that was kind of a first, but point being, we're starting to get people in the community who would know us kind of some ancillary way to start to recognize us as real estate professionals in the market. And what I'm finding is that makes those initial conversations so much easier when someone recognizes you or has some familiarity with you. Something that I know we need to hammer in on, because we've probably got 3,000 people or so in our database at this point, is passive touches to all those people, because trying to actively manage that many people is possible. Of course, we're not trying to do that. We probably have maybe 600 to 800 of them on some type of nurture follow-up system. But trying to do those passive touches where you say, okay, well, how many people is this going to work for? Well, if it works for 1% of your 3,000 person database annually, that's 30 deals right there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I literally just, when Mark and I got on this call, I was just coming off our coaching call with our group, and we were talking about newsletters.
Yeah.
And how Riley and Sydney were sharing how they have a 30,000 person list now. And it's taken them a while, obviously, to build that, but they get on their newsletter subscribers, they get a 75% open rate.
Amazing.
So talking about that passive, like not so much passive, but that mass outreach, because you're obviously not going to be able to take care of every lead one-to-one forever, but having those systems in place to nurture weekly where people actually are looking forward to getting your newsletter and starting to forward it to other people because you've filled it with value.
Right.
I think is really key.
And just thinking, that third number that I mentioned, on a year-over-year basis, it might be slightly lower, but so many of our database deals that we just chalk up to database because they're a previous client or something came in through our pay-per-click. And our database probably accounts for like 40 to 50% of the transactions. And how many of those came in 3 years ago on pay-per-click when they bought and now they're selling or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of asking with the snowball effect too, is like you get over time, a long enough time horizon, you get referrals out of these people, then you get repeat business. And sometimes they buy with you and then 2 years later they sell and they buy again. And it's like, then they refer you a client. It's like that one lead can turn into like 5, 6, 7 deals. You just never know.
It's so true. And we're just not technically savvy enough to have a way to quantify that. But I would often say, when we look at that ROI that I was saying was the best by far, that's just counting it as one and done, not counting about referrals they provide to us, not counting repeat sales. It's already such a nice number to look at. It just makes it a no-brainer.
Yeah. That's just the first bit of business you get from it.
Right.
That's amazing, man. This is what I love to hear, because we're always framing this as a long game. And it's not that last ditch effort to make it in the real estate industry. I think it's, if you're going to do it, you got to do it seriously and look at it long term. And I think you're really living proof of that. And I knew when I first talked to you, you could sell and you were serious. And it's really nice to hear that you really started working with the systems that we provided, and that worked out. That warms my heart.
Well, here's something I'd add to, and you didn't pay me to say this, but in that first 4 months, I could have very easily been like, it's the system's fault. right? Because people don't like to take
Oh,
accountability.
people do say that.
I can imagine, right? So I could have been like, well, it's not working. Well, I've only got 2 deals or whatever, and I spent this money and the ROI is not there. And even as someone who has a degree, I guess you could say, of like a ability to sell just naturally, it's not something that I trained on necessarily. It's just there. If you don't put in the work, it doesn't matter if you have some natural gifts or whatever, it's not going to happen, period.
And it doesn't matter where you generate leads if you don't put in the work, really. It's like, I think a lot of agents, they want things handed to them on a silver platter, and that you're just never going to build a sustainable business that way. If you're only focused on just referrals and people who are like hot, ready to go. And we just put out a video about this, like how to turn, colder leads into hot leads and how many touch points it takes on average. And you said it, like 8 to 12 is where you start to really see that engagement of a lot of leads. It's only like, 2 to 5% of leads that you really have those super warm conversations initially. A lot of the gold's in the follow-up, as you said. So tell me this, like, one thing we're dealing with right now, because it is a pretty hard market. There's a lot less money in the market right now, but the smart agents are doubling down, and there's a lot of people who are cost shopping. And so we've always focused on delivering more value than anyone else. And so what would you say, because if you do this really well, like if you do this okay, and if you do it really well, that can be a huge difference. That could be the difference between doing 5 deals a year and 30 deals a year with this. And we've always erred on the side of like, let's do more, let's do this well, let's provide the systems, let's do the ads better, like let's do more. So what would you say to someone who's on the fence about working with us, is like maybe had a conversation with us, but they're kind of on the fence, shopping around and making a decision?
Well, I'd encourage people to think about where they want to be in 12, 24 months, 5 years, and then kind of work backwards. And if the goal is to be making 2, 3, 500 in GCI, is the start of that like the budget option that, isn't really offering that much? Or is the start of that going with a professional group that has a track record of showing that if you come in and you put in the work, we can provide this for you? I'd say it would be pretty clear at that point what choice you go with.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I think people like to price shop, and it's a real thing, but we're going to continue to err on the side of doing more, because we know that most people need more, and we want to be able to help you through every part of that end-to-end process. And yes, no, I did not pay you to even do this or say that, so I appreciate it. Yeah. But Mark, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's always great to hear these stories, and I think it's inspiring to hear these stories where you were doing 40 and now you're what is that trending this year? 60? You're trending probably over 150.
Yeah, we're shooting for 150, and the average GCI on all those transactions is up. Probably it'll be up 20% from like 2 years ago, just the average GCI, because the people who are working harder for referrals are the higher dollar, closed people.
Like the mayor.
Yeah, well, I don't think the mayor makes very much here. I don't know. Maybe, but he's like connected or whatever. But I guess one thing I believe, a parting thought, so the market up where we are has compressed the past 2 years in a row in terms of overall volume. And we've, we more than doubled last year. And we're, God willing, going to like 50% increase this year, something of that nature, maybe a little more. I always go back to looking at the ROI and the ad spend year over year. I'm like, if there's an ROI there and you can handle it, spend more money. It's kind of that simple.
Yeah, that's what I always tell people. Is like, it's about getting those first few deals done, so you're kind of in that like break even ROI area, and then it's all, from there it should be blue skies, because you're going to start, it's going to snowball over time. You're going to start generating more, you're going to start closing more, and it's about reinvesting that, especially in the beginning. So Mark, I can't express how much I appreciate this, man. I know you're a busy guy, like given how many deals you guys have done this year, so it means a lot to me. So thank you very much, my man.
Great speaking to you, Eric. Thank you.